This is Craig from ProParts USA. I'm going to show you how to install Delrin offset bushing into Mazda RX-8 upper control arm to add more negative camber to the front of the car. This is the bushing. I've put a couple marks on it to kind of give me an angle for when I drill the holes to pin them. And then I've also put a piece of yellow tape with some red dots to make it easy for you guys to see exactly what I'm doing. So this bushing is just sitting there already in. This is the one we're going to install. Basically, we're going to slide this bushing through the right way. In order to have more negative camber in the front of the car, we need to shorten the upper control arm, which means the bushing needs to, the offset hole needs to be closer to this ball joint. If you wanted to take away negative camber, you could rotate it the other way. I suppose you could rotate it in any axis you want depending on what you're trying to achieve, but normally you just go for the maximum amount of camber on the upper control arm and then you just adjust the bottom to where you want it. But anyways, this is what we're going to do. So bushing, control arm, drill with a drill bit on it. There's a piece of hose on here to control the depth of the drill bit. It doesn't matter if you go through the bushing, but you know, this just helps you from not running through the whole thing. A mallet if it needs to be tapped in. We're going to use some 2-part epoxy, 5-minute epoxy glue to go around the inside of the hole and the bushing just to take up any space that might be left over. All these control arms are slightly different, and the bushings are designed to just have a very, very light press. So if some are a little loose than others, we just think we should put epoxy on it to fill up any space or gaps so that when the set screws are in there, they're just holding it from rotating, not having to hold it from moving around in any way under load. This is also done this way so you at home, if you made them so they pressed in, you probably would have to modify the inside of the hole for the sleeve because it wouldn't rotate properly. So we tried to make it so it's going to work when you get it to your car. Anyway, 2-part epoxy. Something to mix the epoxy with. We have the tap to tap the holes. We have two 6mm set screws we're going to use. The Allen key wrench to tighten that. A centering punch to mark where the holes are going to be drilled. And then some Loctite once the screws are ready to put in. So the way you put the bushing in, there is 2 small dots that allow you to line it up with the seam on the side of the control arm. So that is basically centered with the bushing hole and runs right up to the center of the ball joint. So again, it needs to be the shorter way, so we're going to slide that in there like so, and then I'm going to sight the 2 dots to line up with that control arm, and that's how it's going to go in. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and mix the epoxy and put it together. You need very little epoxy. It's just a thin coat. They're almost a press fit, but not quite. They're designed that way on purpose. Now you can see how little there is. It's only that little bit amount there. If you think you need more than 5 minutes for this, you can get something that takes a little longer to dry. The drying time's probably not important unless you're going to go put it on the car and race the thing in the next 20 minutes or so. So again, just a thin film on the thing, part way, you know, one section, a little bit on the inside of the arm. It'll definitely squeeze some out regardless. That should pretty much do it. There's a thin black stripe. You can sort of see through the edge there. You can see a little bit on that. Now we're going to do what I showed you earlier. We're going to line it up the right way. 2 dots. Okay, now that's pressed in the way it should be. I'm going to wipe off anything on the outside just so I don't get it all over myself, hopefully. Okay, just double check that you have it aligned right. If you can't move it by hand, find something that won't damage the bushing and lightly rotate it. But it should turn by hand. Now I'm going to put this arm in the vise just to drill the holes. I have a center punch here. This one's an automatic one. You can use a regular one, but I'm going to line up on my little dots and put a couple little dimples. Now I've got my drill bit. I'm going to line that up right there. And I'm going to look at my line I drew on the side here, which kind of gives me the angle I want to be at. That's one. Let's see, I'd probably turn the arm around if I was not doing this video, but let's try it like this. Same thing. Okay, that's 2 holes drilled. So this is to stop you from going all the way through the bushing. It doesn't matter if you go all the way through the bushing. You just got to make sure when the sleeve goes in that any plastic hanging out or anything isn't interfering with it, so it's smooth, rotates smoothly and free. But that's why I put the piece of hose on there. So here's the tap. We're going to run that in. In this case, I did not go through the bushing, so it's going to want to stop before anything. So I'm going to run it in until it stops. Looks like it did not stop. It looks like it might have just went through the end. So this is a good example of what's still okay. For some reason, the second hole did not go through. Maybe it didn't push as hard or whatever. So that one stops, so that's good. I'm going to pull off the tape. Now we got these 2 set screws. And put a little Loctite on them, just so they can't, because these aren't really forced in there very tight. They're just sort of sitting there, locating the bushing. Okay, put these in. Okay, so that's the 2 set screws in. One goes in just a little bit further because I drilled through, and the other one stops a little short, which is fine. Once the Loctite dries, they will stay in place. So you just need to make sure everything's clear. And that's how you pin the bushing. This arm is basically ready to test fit and make sure everything works correctly. And I'm going to show you how that should work. Here's the jig we made in order to figure out what size the bushings needed to be. So we're going to use this to test fit our arm to make sure everything's working the way it should. So those bushings should just slide right in. This one's a little snug, which is probably because of this. Okay, there we go. Now everything's moving. So this goes like this. If this is your car, this is what you need to, once you get it on your car, it needs to do the same thing. Okay, so the bushing should move at least this easy, if not easier. That does not take too much force. If it moves any tighter than that, you need to make sure everything's lined up correctly and that the pins slide in and out. It should move, it shouldn't just drop on its own right away, although it can. It should have just a little bit of friction, and then once they break in a little bit, they'll be pretty easy to move. The freer they are, the better the car is going to work. And so if you snug these, theoretically, it should stay right where I have it now and shouldn't be really any tighter. See, it still moves pretty freely, about the same. The bolt tightening didn't really change much. So when the arm's tightened in the car, it should move at least this easy, if not easier. And like always, if you have any questions, send us a message or something and we can go over any questions you may have. Also, we're more than happy to install them into your set of control arms. Just got to let us know and send them to us. Thanks for watching the video.